Hello everybody, welcome back to Into the Veil. This is Rachel, and I've got Ken here. I thought this evening that we might talk about what it means to be an empath. I have my own personal experience with this, but I also feel like a lot of our mutual subscribers are also empaths. There's not a lot spoken about being an empath. And with that being said, at 52 years old, I spent probably the first good 35 years, maybe longer, trying to understand what it meant for me. There's typical signs for being an empath, as per psychology, medical science, if you will. Having a lot of empathy, understanding the experience and the feeling that somebody has, even if you haven't had that experience. A lot of these things that we're going to be talking about, I think, if you might be like I was, you think that everybody is this way, and they're not. Being able to feel what someone is going through or has gone through without actually going through it is a gift. Being able to honor other people's feelings, traumas, and good things too, their excitement. It's not something everybody can enjoy or correlate with, so that in and by itself makes you unique. But sometimes it can also create its challenges. Having closeness or intimacy in close relationships can often be stressful or overwhelming because you feel them so deeply. So not only do you have your own emotions, thoughts, and feelings that you're working through, but you're also getting a whole nother set to work through. It doesn't mean that you can't be close or that you can't be intimate. If anything, you can be even more so, but sometimes it can cause you to want to retract a little bit and create your own identity again, and that can be misinterpreted by the people that care about you. They may not understand. Most of us are blessed with great intuition, picking up on subtle clues. A lot of empaths are natural lie detectors. Whether they say anything or not, they're going to know that you're lying because they feel that you're lying. It's that simple. If you say you're doing fine, they're going to know you're not doing fine, or vice versa. So don't think you're being too judgmental if this is something you pick up on. And also, for those that are with an empath or an empathetic person, don't feel like they're trying to pick on you if they decide to call you out on what they're feeling, because I think it's important for that air to stay clear, be clear, and to have solid direction. And it feels very muddled a lot of times for an empath. If they're hearing one thing and they're feeling another, it's very difficult to know how to communicate. It's very difficult to know just the right thing to say, because you may not want to invade someone's personal space, but you also don't want them to feel like they can con you. So, natural challenges. Most empaths do feel exceptionally comfortable in nature. There's something very giving in nature that restores us, that speaks to us in a totally different way. It doesn't want to convolute us. It doesn't want to mix our energy with the craziness of the world. It's just very natural, it's very raw, and there's something very heartfelt in it. So, the need to get away from the chaos, the need to relax and restore, if you're able to. And it could be a park. It doesn't have to be a great big hike in the mountains or anything crazy. I know for me and Ken both, our best time generally is out in the woods or in nature. It's just whole. It's just got a sense of completion about it that lets us rest. It lets us not have to second guess. Another thing that I think is important is sometimes empaths are taken as being antisocial, and they're not. They can be introverts, but they can also be extremely extroverted. But being in crowded places, trying to go to a club or even a restaurant for some, any place crowded can be extremely overwhelming. Part of that depends on the empath's personal energy field. It depends on how expansive that is. For those that have a field that runs plus or minus, say, 20 feet, everything in that circumference of them is subject to their discretion as to what they're feeling. They may have walked in the door in one mood and suddenly they're feeling a different mood. They're feeling emotional or tense. Nobody has said anything to them. Nothing's been done to them, but they just suddenly are uncomfortable. Chances are good it's somebody in their space. And the problem with being, I'm going to say problem, that's not the right word. The challenge with being an empath is that many empaths are healers. Whether they know it or not, they're healers. So the spirit of that person, I know I have been guilty, is constantly seeking what needs healed, at least on an energetic level, if not a conscious level. So subconsciously there's a part that's always reaching out with their feelers, trying to see what can be made better, what can be made whole. Because it's like an instinct. But oftentimes, without conscious awareness, when this happens, it can catch you off guard, because it'll just suddenly come on you. So part of being an empath that's important is being very cognizant, being very aware of yourself, being very aware of your environment, and realizing that not everything you feel is yours. Most of the time people tend to want to confide in us. And sometimes you're looking at people saying, that's a little too much information, but you don't speak. You just let them go. And it's just, they instinctually know that you have a sensitivity to how they're feeling. So a lot of this is very subliminal. A lot of this is very Thinking of the right word for it. It's just a lot of interaction going on, soul to soul, spirit to spirit, without the conscious mind really being involved. Another thing for empaths to be aware of is that a lot of times they can be vulnerable to manipulations. Some of this depends on the strength and the awareness of the empath, but the younger ones especially, or those that aren't aware that they are, can draw narcissistic types of people in their lives, or maybe people that would like to manipulate them because they feel so deeply. And no, it's not fair, but it's our obligation to be true to ourselves. Ultimately, it's not going to serve us to point fingers or any of that. It's up to us to be able to recognize what's going on, though. High sensitivity to sounds, smells, perfumes, any kind of jarring sound, any super low frequency. We are probably more susceptible to infrasound than the average person. I think everybody is going to be affected by it. The physical effects it has on us may be violent. It can cause nausea, splitting headaches, blurred vision, just immediate. So if you suffer with any of these things, you might consider using closed caption. You might consider anything that helps you negate that energy. If you feel like you might be subject to infrasound, try the higher hertz, like the 432 or what were some of the others? 536.
Well, there's several. Infrasound basically is below the normal range that a human ear can hear unless you turn the volume up extremely high. 18 hertz, 17 hertz, these are all conductive of fear, anxiety, depression, paralyzation, put you in a catatonic state.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things in our environment around us generate that infrasound. Machinery, the electrical high lines, the power grids and stuff resonate at a low frequency. If you're anywhere in proximity to a windmill farm, those are a huge conductor of a low frequency infrasound.
And I think some people are more susceptible than others. Everybody is affected by that, though. Don't be fooled. Just because you aren't an empath doesn't mean you're not affected, because it can have physical effects. It will thicken the membranes in your heart, in animals, they've done a lot of research on overexposure to these things, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to study about it, to be aware of. Always a plane.
The sounds that you hear might be extremely annoying, but it's the sounds that you can't hear that can kill you.
That's right. So we'll go into more on infrasound separately, but just know that you are probably more physically affected by it than you realize. Thought patterns, thought vibrations, I feel from personal experience, have the same effect physically as infrasound does to an empath especially. Now, a lot of this depends on what type of empath you are, and there are different types. But for those that are extremely sensitive, it all serves a purpose But knowledge and awareness are key to the health of the empath. Needing time to recharge and reset is important. I know from personal experience, I was in salaried management, and for years I just ran and didn't enable myself working with the public. I didn't enable myself sacred space. I did not enable myself or understand how badly I needed that space. And it can cause burnout. It will cause burnout to anyone, but most especially empaths, because they need a space to cleanse. They need a space to release all of these excess energies that they've been absorbing. Most of the time we're guilty of wearing our heart on our sleeve because we feel so deeply that even if it's not our issue, it somehow becomes our issue. And we're feeling it for that other person or for that situation. And it's really, it isn't that we run around with our heart on our sleeves, but we just genuinely feel that deeply. And a lot of people don't understand that. And that's okay. But we need to understand that. All of these things can lead us to feeling like we don't fit in. The things that are simple and normal to everybody else around us become very complex for the empath. A simple social gathering, a simple conversation, it's just not as cut and dry for the empath as it is for most people. And there again, a lot of people don't understand that need to excuse yourself early, or the need to, they want to think something's wrong with them or wrong with the gathering or whatever it is, and it's not. There's nothing wrong specifically with the event, but somebody in that space or something in that space is off for the empath.
God forbid 20 empaths gather together in a room together. There won't be a conversation, but everybody will either be laughing or crying.
Right? Oh. So, the challenge in that part of it is that it can cause a lot of empaths to want to isolate. And that's not necessarily the answer. Rejuvenating, taking nature walks and maybe a walk in the rain or gardening, and trying to develop little habits. Meditation, of course, for many is helpful, but trying to have a routine that creates that sacred space, if only for a few minutes at a time. It's as important as it is for a diabetic to eat regular meals, or for, a routine, something that they can count on, something their system can count on, and learning how to expunge all of that excess. I know for years I walked around feeling like a nuclear warehouse or something. I just felt like a time bomb waiting to go off because I didn't know how to release it. I knew how to hold it. I knew how to balance and ground everything in my space, but I did not know how to do that for myself. And that's really important. Setting boundaries. Knowing how to set boundaries for yourself. If you're with anyone that is used to you bending over sideways and backwards and upside down for them because you're constantly feeling what they need, for you to start setting boundaries suddenly might make it seem like you don't care, but it's actually the antithesis of that. You actually are caring more because you're also caring about yourself. And, it might deserve some conversation, some explanation, to say, hey, I understand how you feel, but I need for you to understand how I feel. And making yourself a priority. I think most empaths see the world differently. Almost everything. And I'm going to speak for myself, and maybe some of you have experienced this, but almost everything has a certain meaning because everything has a feeling. I can find meaning in animals, bugs, blades of grass if I really want to. I don't try to consume myself with every detail, but I have learned that if something stands out to me, if something really catches my attention, then there probably is a lesson or a message, some kind of guidance in it. I look for most of my guidance from, my prayerful thought, but I found that a lot of those answers come to me in this external world. So the types of empaths. Now this is where it gets a little tricky.
Well, we can kind of try to break it down and go down the list, and there's a lot of ground to cover with this. We will do our best to try to explain as much as we can. It might be a long video. We might have to break it into a couple of segments.
Yeah.
But let's start with the physical empath. The physical empath is attuned to other people's symptoms. You tend to absorb the pain and suffering that other people are feeling in their bodies. You
Right.
literally take it within yourself.
And when I can testify to that, because when I was medically intuiting, as a medical intuit, part of that process was with a proper focus, I could feel on my body where their pain was. In that, then you could do the energy work on that location. Or if I was assisting once in a while, it might be assisting, there was a gentleman that I worked with that was a chiropractor, and he was having no result with a patient of his. So he was looking for all the connectedness, all of the reasons for what they were suffering with. Part of that was medically intuiting, and part of it was intuiting the spiritual and emotional blocks. So feeling that physically was very important. What's the next one?
Well, the next one is an emotional empath, and that's someone that picks up on the emotions of others. That's what most people are familiar with when we talk about empathy.
Yeah. And we kind of went over a lot of that.
Covered a lot of that with the emotional empath. And intuitive empath is next on the list, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the emotions. But the intuitive empath offers the component of being able to kind of know what the other one's thoughts are.
Right. And when I do my intuitive counseling, there again, a lot of it is a transference of energy. It is knowing how to take the empathic part of who I am and become or put myself into the situation of a client. It isn't becoming the client. It is kind of like standing in a corner observing the situation, and if with the client's permission, I can feel all of this stuff come together. I can feel what's caused the problem and what it's cause and effect. What the effect is from that cause. And it goes on from there. But that's just a light example.
And being an in-tune, intuitive empath, you can do that when there's even miles that separate you between the other person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have seldom seen that it's not like being in the exact same room with them once you learn how to do that.
All right, so let's talk about a dream empath. Dream empaths can receive intuitive information from their dream state to either help themselves or help others get signs and omens and images and...
Absolutely. I mean, we could have an hour conversation on dream work by itself, and it's a whole different kind of communication, because a lot of times this is when our guides, angels, spirit is communicating with us directly, because our physical world is so busy, it's difficult for them to get a solid word in edgewise. So it might be symbols or colors. You'll hear me often say, I had a dream. Well, if I'm saying it, then I probably instinctually know that it meant something, or somebody was trying to relay something to me. And I know that many of you are dreamers.
Well, this next one on my list is something that I can't say that you personally are guilty of, but it's something that I'm somewhat guilty of, because I think I actually have the ability to throw a rock on the ground and grow a castle.
I'm pretty sure.
But it's being a plant empath and knowing the needs and how to nurture plants, the green thumb effect.
You definitely have the green thumb. If I communicate with them, it's a lot lighter than that. You absolutely know everything they need, and you could grow an oak tree overnight on rocky soil, I swear.
But this one jumps back into your realm, and it's the Earth Empath, feeling the vibrations and the frequencies of the Earth, and knowing the portals and the hot spots and the energies and the
Earth
and the dead spaces. And
the Earth, sometimes, and I'm a Capricorn, so I'm Earth. I'm a triple Cap. I'm Earth through and through. But there's something that speaks to me very deeply from the Earth herself. And part of our experience in nature, especially this last number of months, I believe, is very guided by the sublime energy of the Earth herself. I literally feel when change is coming, it goes between dream state and real state, but I will literally feel tremors as if we're having an earthquake. And the Earth is something, when you can feel her heartbeat sometimes, and you just know it's different. You know it's not your own. It's much slower, more methodical. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation, but if you notice these things, just know that you could be feeling the life force of the Earth herself.
Either that, or you have a magnet in your head like a homing pigeon, and you can sense the magnetic frequencies to tell you which way to go.
Hey, I had a dream about that.
Now,
I actually had a dream about this, people.
In defense of myself, I was born at the end of October, and I think all Scorpios come with a basic intuitive starter kit. So,
yeah, I had a dream that I actually got up and wrote it down in the middle of the night. It just totally blew me out. But it was that it has to do with our pineal gland. But the same way that a bird knows their course based on the Earth's magnetism, we also know our course based on our pineal gland, and that it's all the more reason that we should cleanse it, decrystallize it, because a lot of people that think they're lost or feel lost, it's because they're not sensing their natural path. And there is no way to fail, ultimately, but most especially when we have that direct line with that magnetic force. Ask me to explain it beyond that, I'm not sure I could, but that's what I got.
Well, the next one on the list is something you and I are both extremely guilty of, and that is being an animal empath and being deeply in tune with the animals that are in our space, regardless of what type of animal that may be. And
yeah, being able to feel an animal, there's a lot of debate about animals and whether they die and go to heaven, or what their experience is, but I do know that every animal, they've actually videotaped so much as a mouse dying, and you can see the life force leaving from it. So I do believe all animals have a sense of soul or spirit about them. Whether their destiny is the same as ours or not, I can't tell you yet, but I know that they can communicate, absolutely.
And last but not least, the big kahuna of them all, the Heyoka empath.
Wow, yeah. So the Heyoka empath is one that the Heyoka is considered the sacred clown, sacred fool. And what I do know is that most Heyoka, I'm going to say all Heyoka empaths, are natural mirrors, in that, they sense the trauma or the emotional baggage immediately that you carry, but they won't speak of it. The funny thing that happens is that their presence alone, without even speaking about it, can bring up those issues constantly or consistently, at least, when you are in their space. So you may be accused of saying, and I don't know how many times this has happened to us, you said, no, I did not say. You thought, no, I did not think. And this is consistently a challenge. A lot of Heyoka empaths actually are born breech. They oftentimes will develop certain traits very quickly, and others super slow. It's like from one extreme to another. They may have some crazy amount of talent in one area, and the stuff that's simple to other people, they're just dry, The majority can be dyslexic or ambidextrous. They'll often do a lot of things backwards. They can be unpredictable at best emotionally. Part of that is because they have the same ability to feel like any other empath, but there's almost this unspoken rule that they aren't to bring up what somebody's issue is. It's more their job to reflect their issue, which can be very difficult.
If they walk into a room and someone internally is a butthead, they start reflecting back. Butthead.
And they haven't said a word. There's just something about them that draws out this maybe that person went through a childhood full of judgment, whether from their family or friends or whatever. I say friends loosely. Schoolmates, let's go there. And so they automatically are going back and revisiting that old wound. There's something that the Heyoka empath shows them about this that needs healed. And that's ultimately the Heyoka's job, is to show you what will make you whole, what will bring you to your own completion and wellness. But usually they suffer for it. They're generally people that will think outside the box. They don't see limitation the way a lot of people see limitation. They may appear a lot younger mentally or physically. I'm trying to think what else might go with it.
Well, one of the phrases that comes to mind is, if you're pointing a finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back.
Yes.
And that's very Heyoka.
And that gets into, I've barely touched on mirroring, but there's a whole powerful world once you get into understanding the mirrors that are presented to us. That includes people most of all.
Well, just when you thought that we had wrapped it up with the Heyoka, there's one more that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention, and it is extremely important to be aware of this. And I know a lot of you have experienced this and may not have realized exactly what was going on or how to label it, but that is the Predator Empath that pulls on everybody else's energy, and basically an energy vampire that just drains the joy and the life force out of everybody around them.
And that can get into those narcissistic types. The predators are lethal for an empath. And part of my challenge for years was, my solution to being an empath was to shield. And I think I was telling Kenny a short time ago that something I realized in that was, yes, it protected me. It kept me from feeling as much. Because when I was young, I would mourn over things I had no idea what I was grieving. I would go through cycles of, just huge waves of emotion that I didn't understand. Even so much as discarnate energies. If they were in an emotional space when they passed on, if I was in the wrong place, I could just get completely overwhelmed with that. And of course, once they pass over, it's even stronger than it was when they were alive. I didn't have a place for any of these things. I didn't understand what to do with it. And I drew a lot of predator types because they could feel, what would you call it? They could feel my need to make things better. They could feel my desire for them to be happy. And so I would overcompensate, trying to fix so much. And it's probably only been in this last decade that I have really understood that it is not my job to fix everything. An empath, as it's been given to me, we are here to hold a vibration, most all of us. Most empaths, and you can have one or all of these traits, okay? They try to say it's one or another, or that one is stronger than another if you have more than one. I'm not sure that I agree with that. But a lot of empaths are very claircognizant, is what they call it. It's reading the energy field of other people to know what needs to be done. And I can agree that that's kind of what that's used for. It's knowing, do they need a pat on the back? Do they need a pat on the butt? Part of that might be maternal. But honestly, I don't think it really is. I think it's just that knowing. I've had workers that were treated totally different because I knew what each one needed on a given day. And today it might be a hug, and tomorrow it might be a good lecture. Psychometry, being able to take an object and hold it, and this is part of what's useful when we're trying to maybe find someone that's missing, or maybe they already know they're gone and they just haven't located a body or what their experience was before they passed. Being able to take objects and get the impressions from the energy of that person's object or that place. Back into plant energy. There's some that are considered very plant oriented, and they tend to grow and prosper really well because just the same way as they know how to get a plant to grow, prosper, be abundant, they also know how to apply that to their own life and the life of those around them. Of course, fauna, using the animal energy. Geomantics, they read or get signals from the earth. So kind of like I was saying that I can feel tremors when change is coming. Tornadoes are very powerful for me. There's a lot of geomantic empaths can predict natural disasters based on certain predictors that they sense, feel, see. Telepathics use more than their 5 senses in order to be telepathic. A lot of the mind speak that we use with Sasquatch, it also takes a different kind of, it's almost a sixth sense to know if it's them, if it's, something else. It's being able to delineate energy through telepathy.
Everything has an energetic signature, and when you're adept and tuned in, you can tell the signature of who's trying to communicate or what's trying to communicate.
Absolutely. Precognitive, there's the dreams, emotional or physical upheaval prior to events. So in other words, you learn that you are feeling like a volcano. That's another one. You're feeling like a volcano, and you know something's coming because of the emotional upheaval, or maybe you have physical pain prior to certain events. So it kind of gives you a yellow light, or gives you something to give pause to so you can pay attention to your surroundings. What else?
I was just laughing at myself when you were talking about that, because I think my energy is more likened to a tsunami.
Yeah. But that's good, we can't all be the same. Oh, what else? Of course, being emotionally receptive, physically receptive, being a medium. Channeling is, I don't know if I could channel as easily if it weren't for being an empath, because it takes being able to not only sense the source of what you're channeling, there has to be discernment to know if it's of light or not. There has to be A lot of times, especially if it's discarnate energy, being able to feel that energy and the situation they were in, or, what's keeping them bound in that consciousness. So, I think right now, what I've been given or what I'm feeling is that a lot of empaths are really struggling right now. And there's a number of reasons for this. Right now, we're going through a huge shift. And it's more than a group consciousness thing. It goes way beyond what we can really fathom. But what I can say is that we need to hold the root. We need to hold the vibration and learn. If you don't know how, reach out to me, but learn how to filter. Learn how to, I consider myself like a big electrical cord between spirit and the world. So whether it's in healing or feeling someone's pain, it doesn't matter what needs adjusted. I just plug in to both ends and I let it just go through me rather than trying to hold it now. If someone is not well emotionally, spiritually, physically, I just pull it out. But at the same time, I push it out from me. And I allow the universe to decide what to do with that, because energy is energy. It never ceases to exist. It only changes form. So I figure, we remove it from one spot and send it to God or, spirit, whatever you connect with, and let them turn it into something else. Let them make a positive out of a negative, if you will. It's much easier than trying to warehouse all of this feeling, all of this emotion. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't get me sometimes, because if you don't see me for a week, I've probably been filtering. I've probably been expunging. And it's not all bad. It's just to get back to my core, to get back to who I am in all of these things, I have to run through little processes. But you don't have to suffer. And know that you are not alone. Like I said, if you need something, if you need to know how,
And basic little tricks of the trade, taking saltwater baths, walking.
Oh, absolutely.
Walking barefoot on the ground.
Get you some sea salt. If you have a bathtub, sea salt will pull, I cannot tell you how, but it will pull those negatives out, and you can literally see them going down the drain, and let it go. Deciding not to own all of it. Deciding it is not yours to fix. You are a tool. But you don't have to make every situation a right. You just have to know what your part is in it. Anything?
Well, I think there's probably a lot more.
Yeah.
But that's enough to absorb for right now. And there is bound to be a ton of questions at the tail end of this, so...
And there is a lot to being an empath. A lot. There's not a lot of information readily available to truly understand how it works.
It might seem like we have talked for quite a while, but we've barely scratched the surface.
And know that it's a gift. right now, if it's put you in a rough spot, it may not feel like a gift, but it can be. And it's not something that's given to just everyone. You were given the gift because you could handle it. But knowing how to handle it is key. And like I said, if there's anything that I can help with, absolutely I will. If we need to do a more extensive, look into it or explanation of it, I'll dig deeper. But it is a lot to process for this.
And if you happen to be one of those predatory empaths that like to feed off of other people's energy and emotion, come see me. I've got some special Scorpio treats for you.
Just remember, no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. No one can take advantage of you unless you allow it.